Welcome back to the Pretty Chill Podcast. This is John, reporting live from planet Earth. I hope you're enjoying the show as much as I am enjoying producing it so far. It's been just so much fun for me to get this out there. I'm only a few episodes in, and just like showcasing some of these amazing people I've met means so much to me. And thank you all for your support, just for cheering me on, saying keep going, listening and watching, whatever. Just thank you so much. I'm super grateful to have the opportunity to be here and the resources to produce such a cool show. And also just to be able to be in the presence of some people that I feel are pretty amazing. So thanks to everybody. Thank you so much. We are in season 1 of the show, and we'll be releasing an episode per week for probably 10 episodes. So please like and subscribe and all these things that I'm supposed to say. I don't want you to miss any episodes. So thanks again for the ongoing support. Please reach out if you have any feedback for the show, if you have any guests that you suggest I talk to, anything. Like this is a situation where I think we're all friends here. So reach out anytime, and I think it'll only improve the show. Let's just get into today's episode. Today's guest is a friend of mine, Taylor Garrison. Taylor was a professional baseball player who was just knocking on the door of the New York Yankees. He was so close to making a big league roster, but he shares that whole process of kind of the behind the scenes of what it was like coming out of high school and going to college and being highly recruited from some of these big time organizations. And we talk a little bit about the business, because it is a business, right? These huge sports organizations, they're just trying to run a business. So Taylor will share some of his personal stories of that journey. And then we'll also talk about what Taylor's up to these days, working with the youth, where he can obviously bring in his expertise, but also his love and passion for just movement. He's really big into movement and mobility and taking care of the body. So he shares a little bit about what he's seen with some of these younger athletes growing up. And there's a lot of improvement that can be made for some of these kids. And Taylor talks about how some of these kids can't really squat or bend down. So he's finding his place in these youth programs and really just trying to get kids moving correctly, which is only going to help every aspect of their life, not just hitting home runs. So please enjoy this conversation with Taylor Garrison. All right, y'all. Welcome back to the Pretty Chill Podcast. I got a special guest in the studio today. It's my good friend, Taylor Garrison. Taylor, what's up?
How you doing, man? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Had to have you. When I was making this season 1 roster, I was like, you're one of the dudes I just wanted on. I feel like there's a lot of similarities in our life and sports and spiritual path and just overall just mellow chillness. I think we're on the same level. So I'm stoked to dive into some of these things.
Me too, man. Thanks again for having me.
Of course.
Excited.
So I wanted to start with, and I don't know if you remember this. So Taylor and I met maybe 5-6 years ago here in Encinitas, just through friends, and hung out a few times. And then I don't know if you remember this, but this was, it was when I was first attempting to surf. So I had been in a couple times, and I was down at Beacons Beach in Encinitas and just went and got my ass kicked. No idea what I was doing. For the record, skill levels about the same as today as it was then. But I remember getting out and I just saw this dude. I mean, there's a million surfers out there doing their thing. And then I saw one dude kind of on the edge of the water there. And he was stretching and doing some weird stuff, but it's Encinitas. This is kind of, this is what you get here, right?
Weird is typical.
And as I got closer, I was like, that's Taylor. I think I asked you and you said you kind of just take a moment to connect. Do you remember what you're doing? And is that something that you always do when you surf?
Stretching and, moving and getting the body prepped before I get in the water is definitely just a routine and somewhat of a ritual. To kind of take that moment before I get into the water and, be in the sun and stretch the body, open it up a little bit, and use some specific movements to really get the energy flowing. Open up the hips, open up the spine, open up the shoulders, and really just explore what is alive in the body. There's kind of a framework that I go through in terms of the movement practice. But every day it's different depending on, how the legs are feeling, how the hips are feeling, how the shoulders are feeling. And if there's some stagnation or tension in one of these areas, I'll spend a little more time on it. And just bare feet in the sand, getting ready to surf. I mean, moving before I get in there is one of my favorite things to do.
So I kind of want to get your backstory because surprise, surprise to anybody that's listening, I'm sitting in the presence of a former New York Yankee pitcher. So that's a very prestigious situation. So like, what sports were you into early in life? And when did you know you had like this baseball skill?
Yeah. Growing up with 5 siblings, a twin brother and a little brother included in those 5 siblings.
Twin brother. Did I know that? I don't know if I did.
You didn't know that?
I don't think so.
Yeah, fraternal twin.
Wow.
May 24th, 1990.
Okay.
Coming up in a couple days. Yeah.
Coming up.
Yeah, but twin brother. So just connected at the hip. And then the little brother who came a year, 13 months to the day right after us. And mom and dad working, there's a lot going on, other siblings. So really baseball and many different variations of baseball, wiffle ball, many different like styles of that sport really was all we did growing up. And it was so easy because it was me, my twin brother, and my little brother. So we had a pitcher, we had a hitter, and we had a fielder. And we came up with our own style that really like suited 3 guys. And, like that was a major, major part of us growing up together and spending time outside. And then getting neighbors involved and finding other people who love baseball. Getting my little sister involved when she came around, but generally speaking, we were outside playing all the time. We didn't want to be inside, didn't want to be cooped up. My mom didn't want us to be inside. And we had all the people that we needed. So, not just baseball, but bikes, you name it, like every single type of sport, we were involved in those things in some form or fashion. But as we started to get older, baseball continued to be kind of the pinnacle. And I think moving into those older ages when we get into high school, now we're starting to be reflected back by the people around us. Hey, like what's going on there? Like that guy's throwing the ball a certain way and that's special. Or, hey, there's something there here. So people started to reflect back to us. Like we had no idea. We were just doing our thing. Then people, those reactions have an impact on you more now that I'm aware of it, but not as much then. But like, oh, okay, like I'm getting recognition. Let me start to go. And you just continue that loop until, it took me and my twin brother till we were 25 and 27 years old playing professional baseball with the New York Yankees.
Wow.
So
when you were in high school, was there a time when you're like, I'm going to make it to the big leagues? Do you remember a time when you had that thought and you were confident about it?
Never. I shouldn't say never. High school, never. I didn't think about the big leagues in high school. I watched baseball and I was a fan of baseball. I could never really put myself in that position, or never did naturally. Not until I was a junior or going into my junior year of college. I was playing summer ball in Alaska, and I met this really impactful coach who was coaching at Cal Poly at the time. Summer ball is really cool because you go to these summer teams and they're players from all over the country and they're coaches from everywhere. So you get a different experience. And this coach saw me and he started working with me. And all of a sudden, I started throwing 3, 4, 5 miles an hour harder, just like out of nowhere. And then I started getting letters after the games, like from professional scouts. And I'm like, oh, wow. Again, being reflected back a certain interest or a certain skill level. And then that's when it really became like a thing, like, oh, okay, like I can do this. I am good enough. Like, let's go do this thing.
So when you started to kind of get those letters from the big boys, what was that process like? So you'd get these letters and they would kind of try to recruit you or offer you contracts, or what was that situation?
Yeah. So I had no idea what was going on at the time, but what happened is there's the Bureau of Scouting. So basically there's like a scouting bureau that basically wants to get all the potential candidates into their system so that if major league teams are interested in these kids, then they can go to the bureau and be like, hey, do you guys have any information on this guy? So that's what happened in Alaska. The bureau was like, we need this guy in the system. So it was very kind of like basic and general. And then after that happened, in the same summer, I think 4 or 5 professional scouts from different teams. So now I was getting letters with letterheads of Miami Marlins, Philadelphia Phillies, New York Yankees. And now those letters are basically, give me all of your info. Here, what's your history? What's your medical history? Answer these questions. And that stuff is always evolving for these teams specifically. They'll have a specific data set that they want to acquire through those letters. So that's basically what was going on.
Dang. So fast forward to when this is a legit situation. You're like going to sign. Like, what was that process? Like, I guess, how did you choose the Yankees? Did you have a short list of places you wanted to live or teams that you knew had a good system? What were those kind of like final days of decision time like?
I love the perspective that I'm getting from you right now. Like, did you choose? Did you have a list? Like almost like if it's college, and you want to have this list. I wish it was that cool. I think for a select number of players, it can be like that. So if you're like top echelon, maybe the projected to go the top 10 overall, you can negotiate or have those types of conversations with teams where there's a lot of leverage. For me, I was heavily like looked at and considered, but not necessarily projected to go, let's say, in the top 5 rounds. And to give you perspective here, there's 40 rounds. So top 5 is pretty good. I was kind of projected to go from like 5 to 10. Still pretty good.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of things that change in those rounds. My experience personally was there was a ton of interest. I got letters from every single team. Give us your information. We're going to follow you. And then as you start to get closer to the draft, you start getting phone calls like, hey, you're on our list. We don't know how it's going to work out because basically all 30 teams have a list of guys in terms of priority. And depending on who goes where, who takes who, that gives them kind of their next option. So it's really a crapshoot. It's like, hey, we're going to take you in the 4th round and you're waiting there. No call.
Yeah.
Didn't happen, right? Something changed. So for me, it was a little different. I got a call and they were pretty sure and pretty clear, which I really appreciated. And I got a call from the Yankees, which was super exciting did not choose, I mean, obviously if you gave me the choice, I would love them, but I got lucky in that way. Gave me a call and they picked me 3 minutes later in the 7th round of 2012, 247th overall.
Wow.
Yeah.
I just want to kind of interrupt this. Like, what's this like talking about this right now? Is this something that you talk about ever? Because you and I have been friends for years, and I bet you if I didn't find out from somebody else or dig deep enough, you probably wouldn't have told me that you're on a major league roster. So how often do you kind of reflect back on these days, and have you noticed just kind of the humbleness about all this?
Yeah, I mean, speaking of humbleness, I have to correct you. I was never on a major league roster. So
with baseball is like confusing because they got the single A and the triple A. So like,
right.
And I've followed baseball forever, and I still don't even know what's what. But yeah, you can clarify all that.
Yeah, not to get too technical, but basically there's minor leagues and they have like 7 teams underneath the big league team. The big league team is the one that everyone sees on TV and does that whole thing. I never made it to the big leagues. I played at every single level in the minor leagues. So to say that I was on a major league roster is somewhat inaccurate. I was a part of major league spring training for 2 years. So you could say that.
You're right there.
Right. Yeah, I did knock on the door.
You were knocking on the door for sure.
But in general, you know, even as I'm talking to you, like it's a reflection of like, oh wow, like this is a thing that you did and that's impressive. And for me being in it every day, I kind of lost sight of that, you know. And then when I jumped back out of baseball and it ended and I was in, you know, creating new friends and in this community of Encinitas, it wasn't something that I always led with, you know, because I think right away as you lead with something like that, or if you tell someone something like that, they may now all of a sudden put this suit on you and then they're like, you're this, you're this, you're this. And I don't know if I was really like not open to that. I'm totally fine with that because it is a part of who I am. But there was a part of me that just didn't necessarily feel called to like lead with it, you know, and if it happened organically, I was totally fine with it. Like this.
Yeah. We always see athletes, cause I have a ton of friends that played college sports and they have a hard time like letting go of that athlete identification. Did you struggle with that maybe when you're out of the league and looking for whatever was next? Were you like, no, but I'm really an athlete? And did you have a hard time letting that go? How was that? What was the exit like?
Right. I mean, yes, more than I knew. It was wild. The day that they called me and they let me know that I was no longer with the Yankees, I just honestly had one of the biggest emotional releases that I've ever had involuntarily. Like I just couldn't stop sobbing, you know, and I was with my sisters, thankfully, like they can just hold space so great. But what was coming up was like, man, all these memories from when I was 3 years old playing and, you know, it felt like it was over now. So I had a big emotional release and a big emotional day, super supported by my family, which was great. And then it quickly converted into like, okay, blank slate. What's next?
Was it, what got you out of the league? Did you have an injury? Yeah. What was the injury?
Well, performance got me to be released. Now, what happened with the like performance? There was injuries going on. So I tore my labrum all the way around and elected not to do surgery. So I rehabbed that. That didn't really affect me in the career. What started to happen midway through my career was there's a the serratus anterior, which is kind of where the armpit, the lat, and the shoulder kind of meet in this area. It literally felt like I was like getting stabbed in the side every single time I threw the ball. And it was really frustrating because every scan, every x-ray came back negative, like nothing's wrong. I would rest for a couple weeks and it would feel better. And then I would get back out there and then it would come back. So it was a really frustrating experience that really affected my performance. And I would be lying to you if I didn't mention another thing that was affecting my performance, which was a relationship that I was in at the time. I was dating this girl who lived in Florida, which is the hometown of our spring training team. Um, and I was in New Jersey and then New York and traveling and trying to like have this safe, connected experience with my partner. And it was just really hard.
Yeah.
It was so hard for me, and I had no idea then, but I was so stressed out. Anxiety, worry, anxious attachment, um, trauma, wounds, fears. It was just like boiling up in my body. And it got me to a point where I like couldn't focus on baseball anymore. I like would be in a rush to finish my stuff at the field and go back. I was in such a anxious attachment. And I know that now. I had no idea then. And just super stressed all the time. And you talk about this injury that no one could tell me about. I mean, it's hard not to go into the possibility of emotional injuries.
Yeah, and it seems, I'm assuming in that, like when you're on a team like that, it's all physical performance. The mental side, did they have many tools back then? Because I know it's there's awareness now, and I know that you personally have so many tools that too bad you didn't have them back then. But did they guide you at all or check in on you, or what was that like?
So they had a mental performance staff, right? And these guys would basically hang around, observe, and then one of them would come and visit your team for maybe, let's say, 2 weeks or 3 weeks and just spend time, maybe do evaluations. I think at the time it was more about having information on us and being able to use that information and report back to the front office or the guys making decisions like, hey guys, here's what we see on these guys, some possible red flags, which should potentially indicate what you guys do with them. Not so much like, hey man, like I see you're struggling with some stuff. Like, do you want to sit down and talk? Do you want to like go through some things together? And that's really what my experience was. And I didn't know what I didn't know at the time, but they would supplement that with, hey guys, sit down in the room. We're going to do a presentation on what it's like to, have mental resilience.
Yeah. Well, you always hear all the big time athletes that when they get cut or released or whatever, they always say, what? It's a business. I get it. And as fans, we're like pissed at both sides or whatever. But
yeah,
at the end of the day, it is a business. It sounds like they kind of maybe lightly cared, but it was more of reporting that information.
Right. And at the end of the day, like, I can see both sides, right? Like I can see it as a business. Like, are you in the business of personal development, emotional well-being, and, mental performance? Or are you in the business of creating the best performers that you can? And then once you have a very high level performer, like let's say Aaron Judge today, the way he's signed a huge contract, he's a giant investment. Let's say tomorrow he has a mental breakdown. Let's say tomorrow he has an emotional thing that completely takes him by surprise. And now what do you do as an organization? Well, now you're invested. Now this product that you've invested a ton of money in is struggling and you need to get him support. That's not so much happening before you're that guy, before there's a substantial amount of money invested in you. And that's where, it's like, okay, like I understand as a business, you're kind of waiting for guys to kind of fall off or, make it through the trenches and then show you that they have resilience and then, show you that they can perform. Now, what happens after that? I mean, there's stories all over the place of guys not making it. Mark Appel from Stanford, Billy Bean.
Yeah.
First round picks that just didn't pan out.
I mean, I just love hearing all these like true behind the scenes stories. It's just like so fascinating to me. Okay, so you get the call that they're not going to bring you back. You have this emotional release with your family. What are you kind of seeing for the next steps? Like, were you ever like, if I wasn't playing baseball, I'd be doing this, or because it sounds like your whole life was just very baseball focused.
Very baseball focused. And at that point, it was like, I'm not sure what I'm going to do.
Was that exciting for you or not so much?
Both. It was exciting and it was scary.
Yeah.
The exciting part was being able to like start from scratch and be in one place.
Yeah.
I was so traveling 1 week here, 1 week there, and all over the place, never really being settled into an apartment or, starting a life that way. So that was a really exciting part. But I had no idea what I was going to do.
Yeah. I don't know, maybe I'm the minority, but when I have friends that get laid off or their job ends or whatever, I think that's like a moment of celebration, because I always love a fresh start, a clean cut, and just opportunity to just do something even better. Because most of the time, I mean, it probably wasn't in your situation, but most of the time I have friends that like hate their job. They have all these, like, I mean, just bags of passions that they could be digging into.
Right.
But they're at that job.
Right.
And then, if they get laid off or whatever, I'm like, don't you see? Now you can like go do these things.
Right.
I'm curious to hear. So after you left baseball, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like your demeanor in baseball was one thing, and then the Taylor that I met and know is a completely different person. Is that the case, or were you kind of, because you're such a soft, mellow guy, but I feel like you have to have a killer instinct to make it as far as you did. So I'm curious, did you always have kind of like this calm demeanor, or did this develop after you left baseball?
It 100% think developed after baseball. As I like look back on my life and try to connect with the part of me that is, 18, 19, 20, 22, 21, 22, there's moments of this, but it was like deep and like not necessarily expressed. So after baseball, I would say it definitely came through. And during baseball, like being a pitcher and then being a closer, like I loved the thrill. I loved the intense pressure packed situation. And yeah, there was like a bulldog mentality that I had to have. And that was fun, and that's not necessarily gone, but it's just like not necessary.
It's not necessary. That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And it's interesting when you see, I remember I'm a Seahawks fan. So I remember when Pete Carroll was there and he introduced yoga to the team, and it was like this revolutionary thing in sports, and yoga's not that out of this world. It's a pretty normal thing. But so now I'd love to move more to your spiritual journey, because you and I have talked many times, and we just have like a really good spiritual connection. I know you're big into yoga and energy and breathwork and meditation and all these amazing things. Do you remember when you kind of saw this first, I'll say, different light? Did you have a conversation with somebody, read a book, take a yoga class? Do you remember where kind of your spiritual journey started?
It's hard not to answer this question with the experience already having like I've already had it, and like now I'm like in this chapter and version of my spiritual journey. But I could see how it would like crept. It was creeping, and it was like there was a part of me that was like always connected to it and always touching it and pulling it, but like being distracted or being pulled in different directions. So, at some point it did tip and it blew wide open. And that was through a very, very painful experience. It was 2019. I was 29 years old, and I had been working at a new company for a handful of years and thought that this was the trajectory that I was going to go down. It was a startup tech company for baseball. I was like, yeah, This is it. And I started to really get into just the mind-body connection. And I started to like experience some things around observing myself in certain ways. And really, there was a relationship that I was in, again, a partnership that I was in that kind of invoked some deeper questioning. And so I started to look and observe myself in a different way. And then I started to read and get really interested in flow science, flow performance, which was spearheaded by many different guys. But the guy that I gravitated towards was Jamie Wheel of the Flow Genome Project. Him, one of my best friends, Dylan Denso, and I like did his flagship initial program called Flow Performance. And basically what really drew me in was he was working with Red Bull athletes to access flow states to improve performance. I was like, I love that.
Yeah, that's right up your alley.
Right? I was like, yeah. But what he was talking about was breaking down paradigms of conditioning. I was like, so I bought this book called Stealing Fire. He wrote it. And the first chapters of the book are like, eliminate your conditioning around state, basically how geopolitical, political climates, like just let that go. Eliminate your cultural programming around religion. Eliminate your cultural programming around sex. Eliminate, just change your paradigm. And so maybe eliminate is the wrong word. I don't think that they use the word eliminate, but like here's another option. And so from that moment on, it really had this impact on me of like, there's a potential that everything I knew to be true is no longer true. And so that just like shook me a little bit. And I continued reading on the book, and it would continue to have many experiences like this for me that were really speaking to me. And then I closed the book. I finished it on this day. And the moment I closed the book, it was like a dam broke open inside of my body. And I went into complete overwhelm, complete, like, I can't even describe it. Anxiety, overwhelm, uncontrollable thoughts. Like, I was like, this is really scary. And I had no idea.
Just because you didn't know who you were or what things were? Like,
honestly, like, I don't even know, John. Like, I really don't know. Yeah. Like, to this day, like, what initiated that somatic experience in my body? Like, probably a combination of a lot of things. Like, I was searching, I was seeking, I was interested, I was praying. I was like, I didn't know God. I didn't have a relationship with God up until then. But I'm like, okay, well, like, if you're here, like, here's what I want to know. Here's what I'm interested in. And yeah, this whole somatic experience happened to me, and I went into the darkest place that I've ever been for the next 6 months.
Dang. So you're in this dark place. Did you have tools to you're already slowly shaking your head no. So what was the plan?
There wasn't.
Okay.
I was basically brought to my knees, and I had no idea what to do. I had no idea who to talk to. I had no idea how to talk to someone about it. I was like jammed up, full of fear, full of overwhelm. It was such a hard experience for me, but I had this part of me that was, it's going to be okay. There was this deep, deep part of me that's like, it's going to be okay. And I was meditating one day, because the only thing that could help me relax at the moment was getting in the shower, letting the shower hot water hit me in the chest as I was laying down in the tub, and then let the tub fill up.
That was it.
That was it. I literally was like, I can't do anything else but that.
Oh my God.
And so for a couple of weeks, I was like in the shower for hours.
Probably a specific temperature. Probably has to be at the right spot in your heart.
Right. I
chest.
think I like knowing now, I'm like, oh, that's really intuitive. Like
Yeah.
the shower head, like the feeling of the water hitting me was like giving me something to like focus on. The warm water itself is soothing to the nervous system. And then as the tub fills up, anti-gravity. Now I can like, I'm being held, or, there's this somatic experience that's happening that is soothing and giving me some relaxation. So I look back at that now, I'm like, whoever was talking to me there, good job.
That's a very specific thing that I wouldn't think of. I mean,
Right.
but you're probably desperate. You're probably trying everything. You're turning this on. Let's tweak this level. Let's do this. And that's the remedy for you, I guess.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I just went there and I had such a good experience. I'm like, okay, I need to do this more. And then in that experience, in those meditative places, it's like yoga. That's it. It was just yoga. And there was no discernment. There was no deciding. It was like, oh yeah, yoga. And so that same day when I had that experience or felt sense, I signed up for a 21-day yoga online program with daily Om. And it was like, just do yoga for 21 days.
Did you have much experience before then?
I'd been to like one yoga sculpt class with my sister, and it was like super hot, and we had weights, and I like almost threw up 3 times.
Not really yoga.
Not the yoga.
Yeah.
So I did this yoga program for 21 days every morning at 6 a.m. and was coupling that with the bath. And it helped me so much. We were just doing the most simple exercises, but I look at it now and I'm like, just the routine, getting up in the morning, moving the body, stretching the body. And then what happened one day, like halfway through it, it had us breathing. It's just doing a breath, like 4 seconds in, 6 seconds out, over and over and over again. And all of a sudden, my temples in my head just started vibrating. And it wasn't scary. It was like, wow, it feels really good. Actually, there's something happening here that is like changing the chemistry in my body, or something that is really good. And so from that moment on, I was like all in on my form of meditation, yoga, and breath work.
Wow. So this is like a 6-month struggle period. So do you feel like this was like a gradual climb out of this period once you started the yoga? And was there a moment where you're like, I'm good. I feel like I'm out of this?
Yes. As soon as it was still hard. I was still going through a really hard time because it was such an internal experience, and I was still having it was very unstable for me. So it was still a struggle. And at that point, I developed like PTSD of reading books because of that moment.
Oh my gosh.
When that happened to me, like I closed the book and then all of a sudden I literally felt like this entire wave hit me. I was like scared of information. I had this like PTSD thing with like, oh, I don't want to read information because what if it sends me into another episode? And after a couple months, I was still like interested in books, and I was reading this book, and I think it was like Game Changers by Dave Asprey. Not the best book in the world, but like it had this one section where I was reading and I was like kind of just leaning into the PTSD of like, okay, well, like this feels okay. And it gave me this experience of like, you're not crazy. This is something that happens. Here are the things that can help. Keep going. And I was like, oh my gosh. I like felt seen. And so from that moment on, I was like, okay, there's this new like hope in my body. And I just doubled and tripled down on the breath work, the yoga, the meditation.
What is your current routine with these practices?
It's a good question. So these practices, they live inside of me. They're expressed in spontaneous moments. I've gone through chapters of life where I'm super rigid. doing the same thing every single morning and not diverting from it. There's been chapters in my life where the practice has left me, not meditating, not breathing, not doing yoga. And then there's hybrids. And in this chapter of my life, I'm in a hybrid and I'm finding yoga everywhere that I go. I'm finding breath work everywhere that I go. I'm finding meditation everywhere that I go. Right now, like this is breath work, me breathing in and then speaking and breathing and speaking. It's tuning my body to a certain frequency. And I find breath work here. It's also focus. It requires some form of a meditative state to be in this place with you. So, yoga, like sitting in the chair, and then the definition of yoga goes beyond just the physical body. And so that's where I'm at now. And it really has blown my definition of breathwork, yoga, meditation, and a practice wide open.
Yeah.
And so I'm continuing just to explore that stuff.
Yeah. I like that you have kind of your own definition and what works for you, and you're still holding that discipline with it, right? A workout doesn't mean you have to go to a CrossFit gym and go crazy for an hour. It could be you lift some dumbbells, you do some push-ups,
Go on a walk.
Go on a walk, you know? So that's awesome that you just kind of, hey, these are what works for me. It seems like you're in this like perfect rhythm and flow with everything. And yeah, that's really interesting. And I think something that we can all incorporate is just like, what's your definition of things and where can you also just apply these in your natural day-to-day rhythms?
Right. And it takes, I think, time to get to that place. Like there was a time where I needed the rigidity.
Yeah.
I needed a framework. I needed something to follow. And I go through ebbs and flows of needing that. And I just know that now. I didn't know that then. So, I think for every person trying something and then discerning whether it feels good for them or if it doesn't feel good for them, like why is it not feeling good? Is it an opportunity to lean in and explore? And really that's the yoga of everything. So, it's a personal journey for everyone. And I'm super interested to like hear about everyone's journey.
So you have all these awesome tools now. Like which ones, if you can time travel back to when you were playing baseball, what are some of these practices that you would bring back with you to to make your life a little bit smoother and better during those times? It's just hard for me to even think about that for some reason, because I think like just looking at you right now and just thinking of like the fierce focus that you have to have, like it's just hard to even imagine incorporating some of these into your life at that time.
I think now it would, I totally agree with you. It's hard to, think about that, but I know that I would be more into yoga. I know that I would be more into the breath. I know that I would be more into meditation, and I would bake that into my daily practice or weekly practice as a professional athlete.
Even just like a basic breath work. Like I've mentioned a few times, like I've done, the breath work, the whole breath work thing, but just taking some deep breaths, just doing some basic box breathing. If you just did that before you took the mound or started your practice or whatever, that would be a huge decompress, I feel like.
Definitely. Just having the moment to like consciously breathe and, in those chaotic, intense environments when you're up on the mound and, the situation's super pressure packed, like to be aware of the breath and to use that thing as a tool to downregulate the physiology or to bring some more awareness to yourself rather than being a victim to the sensations in your body would be a great tool. But as I look personally, like on my career, the one thing that really, really sticks out is awareness of self, in the sense that like I was so stressed out and I was repeating childhood patterns. I was repeating what I saw my mom and dad do. And I was interacting in a relationship in a way that was causing so much stress and anxiety. and deploying all these coping mechanisms. And, you know, then when I was outside of that relationship, the ways I dealt with the stress, you know, I have always and continue to struggle with using things to numb myself. You know, whether in baseball culture, there's chewing tobacco, there's nicotine, there's, you know, seeds and gum and all these little things to distract ourselves. And then on top of like the thing that may be the hardest to pick out, which is just eating in general in professional sports. You are primed to eat as much as you can. You're primed to pack on the calories, protein, this, that. You have everything available to you. But I had no idea that I was using that stuff to numb the crap out of myself. And, you know, on top of the stressful relationship and changing some things about that, I would also bring a lot of awareness to how I use food. And I could probably walk into a clubhouse right now full of minor league players, young kids from 17 to 30, and pick out the ones who use food to numb.
Wow. Is this encouraged by the program, by the teams, because they want to beef you up, or hey, you've just exerted all this energy, you need to replenish and refuel, or a little bit of both?
Yeah, I think right now, I mean, I'm not 100% like super in depth and connected to the industry, so I never know what's really, really going on behind closed doors. But
it's funny. I want to jump in because I was just listening to a podcast, and there's a couple dudes that play for the Marlins that were on, and they were talking about this exact thing, and the podcast hosts were like, well, which clubs have the best food for visitors? And they were just like, oh, they got all these meals, and we just stuff our face, and so I was listening to that being like, oh, that's awesome, and these guys are athletes exerting all this energy, so they can do whatever they want. But I haven't really thought about it from this lens.
Yeah, and I think, you know, to your point, like it is amazing. The quality of the food is improving so much there because they realize that the calories and the quality of the food is really important. And so that's kind of the low-hanging fruit. Like get the bad crap out, you know. Just get the bad crap out and replace it with the good stuff. And I think the next phase is going to be like, okay, well, no matter what you're eating, if you're eating it in a stressful place, if you're eating it to numb, if you're eating it and you have shame and guilt and you have all these things underlying and you're using this thing to escape, I don't care what you're putting in your body, you're turning that thing into toxic. So, you know, how do you scale something like that in a professional organization? To your point, it's a business. Like, hey, are you aware that, you know, 15 out of 300 of these athletes are using this and have kind of signs of, you know, potential detriment down the road? Do they care? You know, who knows what that looks like? But I know that as the 22, 23, 24, 25-year-old that I was in professional baseball, if someone had this awareness and came up to me and was like, hey, man, in some form or fashion, like if they were able to speak to me and address this thing, it would have meant the world to me.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we're all in for a nice little treat here because Taylor does work with the youth in baseball. So you're able to, well, yeah, what are you seeing right now in the youth baseball? I know it's a whole thing. They got these traveling teams, they're playing all the time. I got some buddies that their kids are playing. It's pretty wild, these teams these days. But what are you seeing? And then what are some of these lessons that you're trying to educate the youth on?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of just fell into baseball. I mean, coaching baseball, it became something like naturally in terms of my progression of my story. You know, and I went in having such a focus on like what I wanted to do for them. You know, I wanted to improve their movement. I wanted to help them move better. You know, I wanted to help them be more connected to their bodies. I wanted to help them breathe, you know, and do all these things that I was talking about. And then I got hit by this massive train, metaphorically, when I got there. It's like I was being fought, you know, like, oh, you're different. You're doing different things. Like, that doesn't belong here. No, I'm not going to stretch like that. I'm not going to move like that. I'm not going to do those exercises. So I still battle with that, you know, and I still try to like have a balance of those things and meet these kids where they're at in terms of their resistance. But the more important thing that I've become super connected to is stopping the pattern of, I don't even know what to call it, but it's like toxic coaching. You know, there's so many coaches out there that who haven't done the emotional development, who haven't done the personal development, who are offloading their emotional baggage onto kids.
Oh yeah, I can immediately go back to my T-ball team 30 years ago or whatever it was. Even just doing a quick rifle through of all my little league coaches, that's all who you're describing right now.
Right. So I got in, I like totally share that experience with you, and I don't know how much it affected me, or I don't know how much it impacted me. Obviously, I can feel that stuff, but all I know is with what I have available today and the place that I jumped into, which is a local team here of 14-year-old kids, you know, the dads that called me in, there was something calling me. They liked my experience, right? Former Yankee coaches, like, duh. Like, have this guy be around these 14-year-olds, but they had no idea about my yoga, breathwork, spiritual, you know, meditative background. And I got into this environment, and these are some of the nicest guys that I've ever met, and they mean really well, but they're just repeating a pattern that they've seen of aggressive yelling and berating and offloading onto these kids. And I'm like watching these kids just freeze. I'm watching these kids close. I'm watching these kids have such a emotional experience that they're not even aware of. And I'm being shown this movie because of the experiences that I've had, you know, and the lens that I have. And I got in there and I had no idea what to do. I tried to do the stretch and the thing, and I'm like, so what I did was I was a mirror to the coaches. When they were acting a certain way, I just stayed. I didn't interact with the kids the way that they interacted with them. And that immediately, they're like, what is this? This guy's doing it differently. This guy's actually going over to them and having conversations, being attuned, you know, not offloading. So as soon as that happened, one of the dads like came to me like a couple of weeks into me coaching and was like, I see what you're doing. And I was like, thank you. I don't really know what I'm doing, but I know that there's this thing that's happening right now in terms of just being a safe presence in these kids' lives.
It's just like, do you remember the movie, Remember the Titans, Denzel Washington? Remember he had Coach Yost, who in the movie, Denzel's this hard ass, like just on everybody, way over the top. And then Coach Yost, the assistant, would kind of take him off to the side and kind of talk to them.
Right.
And Denzel's character, I forget the coach's name, Herman Boone, I think.
Boone, yeah.
He didn't like that. And he called him out. You're just taking these guys and softening them up behind my back. But I remember I think that came out like right after I was in high school. And I was just like, I would love a coach like that. Not to, you know, if I've earned that discipline from the coach, that's one thing. But if I'm doing the best that I can and I'm still like getting that, like I don't respond well to that. So to have that kind of supplemental coach to come over and just talk through it, like that would have been a huge help for me personally.
Totally. And you know, it's unfortunate because sometimes the aggression and the big energy does get a good result.
Yeah.
You know, like a lot of people were talking about professional sports and like what makes them so good. It's like their inner critic that's so aggressive and yells at them all day. And so that pushes them to be the best they can. It's like the same thing in youth sports. Like, what pushes this kid to be so good? He's scared shitless that his dad's going to be pissed.
Yeah.
It's like, yes, it kind of gets the results that you want, but the results that we're tracking are not the ones that we should be tracking. You know, a win or a loss or a hit versus a strikeout can be somewhat of a misleading data point, you know, when we're talking about well-being and longevity for these kids and emotional well-being and personal well-being. So it's a tough thing to balance, you know, because the world is tough. And sometimes you need to be able to garner that energy and confront those energies when you are met with them, and stand up.
Yeah.
You know, but there's, I think, better ways to do it. And I'm currently exploring that.
I remember you came in, this is probably a couple of years ago, and you were talking about the coaching and what you're seeing with some of these kids. And you're like, these kids can't even squat right now. So I think you were, at that time, you were just like, I gotta figure this out. You know, I got to find my place into getting these kids flexible and bending in certain ways, and not necessarily putting them in a yoga class, but if someone can't squat, you know, that's a big deal. So have you seen any improvements? Have you been able to kind of nudge some folks and get some like flexibility in them, and how's that been going?
It's going really well. You know, the coach that I work under, his methodology is, you know, if you can't squat or lunge or do some primal movements, how is that affecting you in your everyday life? You know, and how is that affecting you in moments where you don't really know it's affecting you? So basically, if we can get a 12-year-old to squat better, now all of a sudden he's sitting better. Now all of a sudden his time in the chair isn't as detrimental. Now all of a sudden he can walk better. Now all of a sudden he can run better, and now all of a sudden he can keep himself in better shape. So we see as like, you improve the squat, you improve the life. You could literally change the trajectory of some kid's life if he comes in one day and he has this type of squat. Well, that type of squat, imagine if it's like your prototypical bad squat, or he's all over the place, or he falls over. What does that do to him? Like, in terms of like the story that he has about himself? Yeah, I can't squat. I've never been able to squat. And how does that ripple and play a role in his life? You know? And so, you know, in terms of results, we're really playing the long game. You know, I've done thousands of sessions with kids now, and I've seen a wide variety of jump roping, squatting, lunging, push-ups, and they have drastically improved. Now, to say that has drastically improved their life, we're playing the long game, so I don't know yet, but I know that at some point it's going to be really, really impactful, and if not already impactful for them.
So you're working with kids outside of your coaching. You also do one-on-ones with kids, right?
Yeah. So I'm coaching a team right now with a good buddy of mine, and then I work out of a private gym where we have 18 physical exercises that have been specifically designed to improve the movement performance for humans. So these are just human stuff. And so, you know, after talking with my coach, I'm like, who do we teach this to? Like, obviously it's great for athletes who are trying to improve their baseball, their golf swing. But he's like, it works for anyone. Mm-hmm. Bring in anyone, you know? And so that's really what we're starting to do.
Amazing. So you have all these, obviously the experience, and then just all these insights and stuff that you went through to help your own healing journey. Like, what do you think your ideal call it position would be to get all of your talents out there for the highest purpose, for whether it's young baseball players, regular people. Like, what's the situation where you feel like you're maximizing all your strengths to help people?
That's such a good question.
So I know I think the one-on-ones is pretty close, but I was just curious if you're striving to be like in a different spot where you can even make a bigger impact. I'm not sure if that exists or not.
It does. Yeah. I know that there's a lot of impact in the coaching world and having an influence on young kids, setting them up for success physically, mentally, and emotionally is really something I'm super passionate about. But there's also this other place where I'm like ridiculously passionate about, and it's in quote unquote left field from sports. Yoga came into my life, and then I started to explore yoga in a very intuitive way. I've always loved music, and I started to do spin a lot during that time of like the yoga, breathwork, meditation, exploration. And spin is basically, the indoor cycle studio, and you're moving to music. You're timing movements to music. And the coach that I work with now, he has always talked to me about if you sync any movement up to music, it automatically makes you more efficient.
I love that.
You have to self-organize, right? If I make you do a squat to the beat of a, 88 BPM song, you all of a sudden now have to move in a way that can accomplish that. And it squeezes out any inefficiencies. So I was having all this information come through to me as I was exploring yoga. So I started to do yoga to music. And then that got me into a place of dancing. And I had a couple of experiences on some medicine journeys where all of a sudden I met this dancer who had danced for millennia inside of me. And
they're probably not doing the Macarena. They're doing just natural, tribal,
right,
bouncing around.
I had no idea what I was doing, but like it was very intuitive, and it was very like ritualistic. It was very ceremonial. It was very tribal. But it had all these reminiscences of like yoga. It was like yoga-based dance is what it felt like. And then just like spontaneous exploration of movement, and then, using a lot of hands, and I don't know, feeling super connected to God, and I say this all the time, but like, yoga and breathwork and meditation, I felt very, very close to God. But the closest I've ever felt to God is on a dance floor, listening to some electronic music and just moving in that way. And I think the repetitive motion and the rhythm and the breathing, and it's this ritual for all humans to access these states. And while in those states, the reason that this comes back into the impact place is while in those states, I really do honestly believe that not only personally am I processing and moving through generations of trauma in my body and opening the body up and releasing things, which has an impact on my family before me and my family after me, and also the people around me, energetically, emotionally. I also have experienced these places where it feels like I'm entering into collective trauma, collective wounds, collective stories. And all of a sudden I find myself in the middle of this place, and I'm like, what do I do here? And it's like, dance, move it, work it, And so, I've flirted with this a couple of times of like, is this a fantasy, or is this actually really something? So I can't help but like say that this is something I feel like there could be impact on, but I don't know fully what it looks like yet.
Yeah. And this is going to be a weird statement, but I was trying to find a segue into your art as well. And I feel like you're able to add movement to your art. You literally add arrows. And like, can you share a little bit about your inspiration for your art and your drawings? And what am I talking about with these arrows and stuff? What do you,
Right.
I don't know how to explain it. I just see it. I'm like, I feel like he's pointing something, but it all makes sense and I feel it.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's a language, and
Okay.
I think, what happened for me was this breathwork yoga meditation deep dive. And then all of a sudden in meditative places, I was seeing things. So then I was like, well, I want to start writing. So I just started writing. And then from there, I was like, okay, well, what's next? Like, I want to start drawing. And so I had this grid paper of like dots. I would just do dots. Like it was literally like I was doing hand poke, like, and then connecting the dots and doing designs. And then it progressed into, like painting. And so at some point, my movement practice and what was coming through for me around my movement practice, which was a specific sequence of movements, and then my artistic practice of like drawing, painting, writing merged. I was like, like at some point in the art, in the painting, drawing, writing world, like you kind of run out of things to paint or write. And so I was like, well, I'm just going to use this painting and writing and drawing expression as a way to express my experience over here. So that's what you're seeing in all the symbols that come through to me. I'm basically just trying to create a symbol for a movement. Like this movement equals this symbol. This is what it looks like in my mind. And so you're going to see that all over some of the paintings that I've done. And really at the end of the day, like it's all therapy. It's all expression. It's all creativity, and being in a creative place is so therapeutic.
Mm-hmm. How often are you able to draw these days? Is it part of your daily ritual, or is it you have to clear space for it, or how's your flow with that?
Similar to like the yoga, the breathwork, and the meditation practice, it ebbs and it flows.
Yeah.
There was a time in my life where it was like a literal ritual, and I like didn't walk away from it any day. I felt like I did it every single day for 2.5 years. And then would have bigger paintings and bigger projects, between that. Nowadays, I'm writing more than I'm drawing. So I think, there's also been like kind of a lull in the movement practice. So I think it's a result of maybe just not having too much to express right now, and me being in a chapter of deep inquiry and reflection. Yeah. But it's still very much alive in my system, and it comes back every once in a while. I haven't let go of it though.
Yeah. Taylor, thanks so much for joining me. That was freaking awesome. I know there's just like so much to your journey, and it's hard to cram in. I felt like I was going at warp speed to try to get it all in, but I think that's just the beauty of us sharing this town. You can pop in anytime and be on, and we can go even deeper. So appreciate you so much for being on. I think there's going to be a lot of people that want to, especially, the parents that have young athletes. I think you're really going to connect with them. Is there a good way for them to get in touch with you if they want to maybe get some coaching for their kids, or just a good conversation about all these tools that you have in your experience?
Yeah. I mean, I would love to talk to them right now in terms of like how to get in touch. You can go to www.paradigmperformancegroup.com and send us a message. That's the coaching group that I'm working out of right now. And if it's not that, send you a message. Send your Instagram a message. I mean, we're all a tight knit community here, so in whichever way people can try to get a hold of me is fine. I mean, obviously my personal Instagram is fine too. You can just use my first name, last name to get in touch with me.
Sweet. Yeah. And Taylor's a good follow. He'll post his art and just all these other things that he's into. So we're all friends here. So please give him a follow on Instagram and see all the cool stuff that he's into. Other than that, man, I think that's it for us, and we'll have you back down the road and see what you're up to. But thanks so much for all that you're doing with the youth and sharing with us all the stuff that you've went through. And yeah, I think there's just a lot for folks to connect with you. So thanks so much for joining.
Thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
Of course. And thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode. Peace.
Later.